Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different, really quite unique. We're exploring these incredibly profound insights from an extraordinary personal account, an interview with someone who claims to be a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And look, this isn't just some fantasy story. It's actually a surprisingly deep plunge into identity, morality, and the kind of solitude, that loneliness that comes with an existence most of us can barely even imagine.
Yeah.
So our mission today really is to unpack the most compelling and often pretty unsettling truths that come out of this basically unprecedented testimony.
And it really is unprecedented. What this interview gives us is this, unparalleled window into what it truly means to live beyond death.
Right.
It's a psychological dive, a philosophical examination of immortality, and it's all recounted directly by the person, the being experiencing it. So we're not just, dissecting a myth here.
Right.
We're exploring the internal world, the struggles of someone grappling with what feels like an eternal curse.
Okay, so let's start the journey. We're in 18th century Louisiana. Our subject, Louis. He was a wealthy young man, very tied to his indigo plantations near New Orleans, but his life was just completely defined, really, by this profound personal tragedy.
Yeah, the sources are pretty clear on that.
Extremely clear. Overwhelming grief, immense guilt after his brother Paul died very suddenly. Shattered skull from a fall. Right after Louis had had this bitter argument with him.
Awful.
He literally felt, quote, "I have killed him." And this raw emotional state, this self-blame, it just seems like it created the perfect fertile ground for everything that came next, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's almost a classic setup, isn't it? The protagonist hits rock bottom, completely emotionally exposed.
Exactly.
And it's right then, in that moment of just utter despair, that this enigmatic figure, Lestat, enters his life.
Lestat.
And the transformation into a vampire, it wasn't just physical. Louis talks about his memory of his last sunrise. A final, really poignant farewell to being mortal, seeing the sun gleam one last time before his whole perspective just irrevocably shifted. It signifies the dawn of this terrifying new consciousness. It's not just a change, it's like the obliteration of his old self.
And those immediate changes, physical and psychological, they were, immediate and profoundly disorienting. He describes seeing Lestat shift from looking starkly white to radiant, like suddenly all things had changed.
Right.
And what I found really striking was how he suddenly wasn't afraid of enclosed spaces anymore, a lifelong fear he'd carried.
Right.
It's almost like his human fears just dissolved along with his mortality.
Yeah.
Is that like a common thing in these kinds of stories, or is that detail unique here?
That's a really astute observation. It suggests the transformation isn't just about getting new powers, it's a fundamental reordering of your entire being, even the subconscious stuff. Losing a lifelong phobia like that. It really highlights how tied our human anxieties are to being mortal. When that ultimate fear, the fear of death, is just gone, maybe the smaller fears just cease to matter. But this sudden freedom, it comes with its own brutal side, especially that initial act of killing.
Yeah, the first kill, his own overseer.
And Louis says he felt aroused while they were beating the body, which is just chilling when you contrast it with how disgusted he felt later. What does that initial, almost perverse reaction tell us about the immediate impact?
That initial thrill, contrasted with the later remorse. It gives you this chilling glimpse into the immediate, maybe overwhelming impact of becoming a vampire. It suggests that the monster isn't just some external thing. It's like an internal battle where these new instincts can just hijack your innate human morality, even if only for a moment. And Lestat, always practical, always blunt, just cuts right through Louise's budding revulsion, tells him, you don't drink after they're dead.
Yeah, straight to the point.
Right. And then he introduces feeding on animals, rats, chickens, cattle, just as a practical thing, especially for travel. He just dismisses Louis' disgust.
Yeah.
Really shows the clash between them right from the start.
That contrast is critical, isn't it? Louis' horror versus Lestat's cold practicality, it defines their whole relationship. So they move from the plantations into New Orleans itself, a city described as totally unique in America back then. A medley of languages and colors, super vibrant, but also desperately fragile, always under threat from the wilderness, disasters.
Yeah, a precarious place. And despite hating Lestat, Louis develops this kind of detached fascination. He starts seeing mortal life as precious, even providing for his remaining human family.
Which is interesting, right? This newfound appreciation for life, even though he's now a predator, it just seems to deepen his internal conflict.
And that conflict just explodes with their next big decision. The pivotal and really deeply controversial choice to make a child vampire.
Ah, Claudia, yes.
Louis finds this little 5-year-old orphan, Claudia, just clinging to her dead mother in a room ravaged by plague. He's overwhelmed by pity, thinking about his own damnation, asking himself, if I am damned, I must want to kill her. Why do I feel such pity?
Such turmoil.
But Lestat, completely ignoring Louis' struggle, just transforms her. And Lestat's view is chilling. Peace will only come to you when you can do this every night. There is nothing else, but this is everything. And Louis just asks, in pain, could I not be human again?
It's so clear this wasn't about love or compassion from Lestat's side.
Oh, absolutely not. Lestat saw Claudia as well as glue, a way to solidify their unholy little family, to drag Louis deeper into the vampiric life he hated so much.
Sure.
So they become this very unusual trio, living lavishly in a Rue Royale townhouse, surrounded by art, luxury. Louis says he fed on strangers, often in great melancholy.
Conflict.
Always, but Claudia and Lestat, they were a different story. They might hunt and seduce, stay long in the company of the doomed victim, enjoying the splendid humor in his unwitting friendship with death. It really highlights the stark differences in how they each embraced or, struggled with their natures.
And the paradox of Claudia. That's a key insight here, isn't it? Intellectually, she matures incredibly fast.
That's right.
Reading Aristotle, playing Mozart perfectly, this infallible ear.
A genius mind.
But her body stays that of a child. She becomes, as Louis puts it, a demon child forever. Her predatory side is deeply unsettling. She learns to lure victims with innocent pleas, feasting silently on their terrible kindness.
What does that profound disconnect body and mind tell us about the ultimate horror of this kind of immortality?
It reveals this unique, specific kind of torment. The paradox of Claudia, that razor-sharp intellect stuck in an eternally childish body, it's not just unsettling, it forces you, the listener, to really confront how much our physical development is tied to our psychological identity.
Yeah. Her demon child nature, it just illuminates the horror of immortality when it cuts off natural growth. It creates this internal dissonance that, inevitably leads to rebellion. That contradiction, like you said, it just couldn't last. The tension kept building.
And Claudia's rebellion against being trapped like that became undeniable. She relentlessly questions Lestat about their origins, desperate for answers he won't give.
Yeah.
Which culminates in that shocking act of vengeance. She poisons Lestat with absinthe, cuts his throat, drinks him dry.
Brutal.
And after Lestat is, perceived dead, Louis grabs a torch, goes back to Point du Lac, and burns down the plantation where his vampire life began. Such a symbolic act, right? Cutting ties with the place, with the person who made him.
Precisely. It's an attempt at catharsis, maybe. Trying to burn away the source of his new existence. So, with Lestat apparently gone, Louis and Claudia head off on this desperate trip to Europe, searching for others like them, searching for answers. On the ship, the Mariana, Louis is grappling with these huge existential questions. God, Satan, longing for salvation through belief, wondering about stepping through some veil that separates him from humans. It shows becoming a vampire wasn't just physical for him, it was a profound spiritual crisis.
And this quest leads them to other vampires in Eastern Europe, but they're nothing like Louis and Lestat. They're horrifying.
Yeah, not what they expected.
Mindless corpses, rotted, ragged, with empty eyes. They inspire despair, not answers. There's that vivid story from Morgan, the man who found his dead wife Emily looking fresh as pink as if she were alive, which led the villagers to dig her up and burn the body. It's clear this wasn't the sophisticated, maybe philosophical existence they were hoping to find, just a grotesque parody of their own curse.
It really highlights the sheer variety, maybe the potential degradation of vampiric existence. And for Louis, it just underlines the apparent lack of purpose in it all. And finding nothing, no answers, just fuels Claudia's frustration with Louis.
Especially his inability or unwillingness to make other vampires.
Right. She pushes him, revealing she wants communion with her own kind. But Louis, he just can't bring himself to inflict this life and death on people he cares about, like Babette or Morgan. He still sees it as monstrous.
It shows that fundamental difference again. Louis still clings to some human morality, but Claudia, trapped in wanting connection, just seeks to replicate her own kind.
Then they arrive in Paris, and that marks a really profound shift. Described as a universe whole and entire unto herself, hollowed and fashioned by history. A huge contrast to New Orleans, that desperately fragile wildness. Paris seems to offer a promise of maybe forgetting the damned and questing preternatural thing they'd become.
Does that suggest maybe a connection between a place's deep history and its ability to sort of absorb or even nurture the supernatural?
I think it does, yeah. Paris, with all its layers of history, its ingrained culture. It represents a world that might finally provide the context, maybe the understanding Louis craves, unlike the raw, untamed nature of New Orleans. But Paris introduces them to a completely new kind of horror.
The Théâtre des Vampires.
Exactly. This macabre spectacle where vampires, disguised, perform these gruesome deaths for human audiences. The leader, playing the role of Death, gives this chilling speech about mortality, stripping away a victim's beauty with words. Just as sure as this flesh is pink, it will turn gray, wrinkled with age.
It's like a perverse celebration of what they are, forcing humans to confront their own fleeting lives.
And it's in this dark theater they meet Armand.
Armand, a pivotal figure.
Absolutely. Louis is immediately drawn to him, powerfully, sees him as a potential teacher, maybe the one who can finally give him the answers Lestat never did. Armand is ancient, powerful, seems very detached from the theatrical vampires.
And he reveals the cardinal crime among vampires, killing your own kind, which immediately puts Louis and Claudia in danger because Santiago, one of the theater vampires, hints he knows what they did to Lestat.
Right. The stakes are suddenly much higher. Armand even warns Louis, tells him to project strength, make your face a mask, and think as you gaze on them as on anyone. Beware. This whole introduction of rules, hierarchy, a cardinal crime, it just completely upends everything Louis and Claudia thought they knew about being vampires.
It reveals a far more complex and definitely more dangerous society than they ever imagined.
Yeah.
One with its own codes, its own brutal punishments.
And this is where things really take a tragic dive. The consequences of what they did back in New Orleans finally catch up to them in Paris. Devastating consequences.
Yeah. Willie, Claudia, and Madeleine, the mortal woman. Louis turned for Claudia, they're captured. Subjected to this mockery of a trial. Louis is trapped in a coffin, just hearing Madeleine's cries, facing the awful humiliation of hearing my own cry. Just horrific.
And the outcome, worse. Claudia and Madeleine are forced out into the sun, burned to ashes.
While Armand intervenes, yes, he rescues Louis, but he leaves Claudia and Madeleine to die.
He claims he could not prevent it without risking the wrath of the others, arguing he'd risk losing Louis if he tried. But Louis, in his despair, sees it differently. He sees Armand just protecting his own precious conception of truth.
How does that act of rescue, if you can call it that, further mess with Louis's moral compass, given the immense, terrible cost?
It just shatters any illusions Louis might have had left, any hope for pure connection, for salvation within this vampire world. Gone. Armand's choice, saving Louis but sacrificing the others, it just reinforces this idea that even the deepest bonds are ultimately self-serving in their existence.
And what follows is Louis's immediate, brutal reaction.
Vengeance. He sets the Théâtre des Vampires ablaze, describes the deaths of the vampires inside as exquisite and good in their retribution for Claudia. This isn't the melancholy, conflicted Louis we've known. This is raw, violent, fueled by grief and betrayal.
But the shocks just keep coming. Armand then admits the truth he'd been hiding. Lestat survived the poisoning, the fire. He made it back to New Orleans, protected by other vampires. Armand confesses he withheld this to spare Louis pain, but Louis feels this unexpected spurring to see Lestat again. It's almost like, despite everything, Lestat is his last twisted link to the beginning of it all.
It suggests this incredibly deep, complicated psychological tie, doesn't it? Almost a dependency, maybe, on the source of his curse. So, Louis goes back to New Orleans for one final confrontation. He finds Lestat in this crumbling old house described as dying of rigidity, of fear, unable to adapt to the modern world, experiencing this almost human-like old age, clumsy and grotesquely. It's a pretty pathetic end for the once powerful Lestat, showing that even immortality isn't immune to its own kind of decay, its own irrelevance.
And this leads to the ultimate, just heartbreaking confession from Armand.
The final betrayal.
He admits he orchestrated Claudia and Madeleine's deaths, allowed them to be burned by the sun because he wanted Louis and didn't want Claudia in the way.
Irritating.
And Louis's reaction, just profound despair, a chilling acceptance. He says, "Don't tell me you have been feeling pain for it all these years, not you." At this point, Louis says he cared about nothing. It's a revelation that just underlines the capacity for manipulation, for selfishness, even among these ancient beings.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And that brings us really to Louis's final state of being as he recounts it in the interview. He describes himself as dead and changeless. He says he drinks in the beauty of the world as a vampire drinks, satisfied maybe on some level, but ultimately empty. He exists behind this veil, separating him from all living things. A shroud?
He left New Orleans, the sorrow never leaving him, and just continued his solitary existence. Rejected any further companionship. The true horror, it seems, isn't death. It's this unending, stagnant life.
Yeah.
So this deep dive into Louis' account, it reveals this incredibly profound, often agonizing journey. His tale is one of searching for meaning, for connection, in an existence that seems fundamentally designed to deny both. He grappled with guilt, love, loss, the nature of evil, only to find himself completely alone and changeless in the end. It's a truly haunting depiction of immortality, not as a gift, but as a profound curse.
And the paradox Louis embodies is just so striking. Immortality offers boundless time, endless experience, right? But for him, it leads to this unique form of despair, of solitude. If you connect this to the bigger picture, it makes you ask, what does it really mean to be alive? Especially when you're physically immortal, but feel emotionally, spiritually dead.
Which brings up a really important question for us, for you, the living. If you were somehow given endless time, how would you even define purpose? When all the earthly things we pursue, all the connections we make eventually become transient, how would you find a way to truly live when the very nature of your existence sets you apart from everything mortal, everything that's constantly changing?